Good morning. Thank you for joining us here today. I want to begin by acknowledging that we're gathered here today on the traditional territory of the signatories to Treaty 6 and acknowledge the Métis people of Alberta who share a deep connection and history with this land. For generations, Alberta has been a destination of choice for global investment, which led to robust economic growth, low unemployment, and some of the best paid jobs in the country. But Alberta has faced a tough few years. The collapse in oil prices, then the COVID-19 pandemic. Recently, we've seen recovery in energy prices and a rebound in GDP. However, this hasn't been felt broadly across the economy. In fact, Alberta has lagged most of the country on key economic indicators. Over the last 4 years, Alberta has had the slowest wage growth in the country, and capital investment growth is among the slowest in the country, while provinces like Ontario, BC, and Quebec have seen double-digit growth in the last 4 years. The global economy is changing, and we need to be competitive. We are seeing an increased focus on innovation and technology that will reduce emissions, everything from oil and gas to agriculture to building materials. As a result, new sectors have emerged that could attract investment to Alberta and create good jobs. At the same time, the United States is moving aggressively to support and grow these sectors through the Inflation Reduction Act. Competition for capital is becoming increasingly fierce. Without a response, we could see investment and jobs move south of the border. We must act. With that, I'll turn it over to David.
Well, thank you, Kathleen. And as Kathleen mentioned, we are seeing exciting new sectors emerge across the country and right here in Alberta. But the competition for this investment is increasing all across the country as well. Last fall, we introduced the Competitive Jobs and Investment Strategy. The central plank of this strategy is Alberta's Future Tax Credit. It's designed to level the investment playing field with other jurisdictions because no comparable tax incentive in Alberta currently exists. This is a refundable tax credit of up to 30% that targets large capital projects in emerging industrial sectors like critical mineral processing, alternative fuels, and advanced manufacturing. We also prepared increasing the value of this credit by another 10% for investments that generate key outcomes like high-skilled job creation or new technological capabilities and innovations. Based on similar incentives like the Inflation Reduction Act in the United States of America, the Alberta's Future Tax Credit is estimated to cost $250 million annually, but will leverage a projected $10 billion in incremental investments in emerging sectors and will generate up to 20,000 jobs here in Alberta. Bill 207, Jobs and Investment Incentive Proposal Act, if passed, would implement the Alberta's Future Tax Credit. The bill directs the minister to develop a tax credit that will provide investment incentives to companies making capital investments in clean tech, carbon materials, critical mineral processing, and advanced manufacturing. It's targeted towards the fastest growing emerging sectors where Alberta has the opportunity to compete on a global scale and bring opportunities right here. Lastly, the incentive will also be designed in a way that creates good paying jobs, it supports innovation, and provides training so Albertans will have the necessary skills to work in these new sectors. We are at a pivotal moment. The decisions we make today will have long-lasting implications for future generations. We cannot afford to simply look to the past. We must build on it and look towards the future with ambition and hope. By doing so, I am confident that we can restore our competitiveness, attract investments, build a resilient economy, and create good-paying jobs now and for future generations. Thank you, and I'll turn it over to Doug Brown, co-founder of ZS2 Technologies.
Good afternoon, and it's ZS2 Technologies. At ZS2, our goal is to accelerate the development and the adoption of advanced construction materials that are stronger, safer, and healthier for us and the planet. Our material science-focused company is focused on both reducing the embodied carbon footprint of buildings and the operational carbon footprint, which, if you're not aware, really dominates the emissions that we produce. The cement solutions that our team has developed are more resilient to water and fire than conventional materials and really offer a great solution for a changing climate. And we're seeing widespread demand for our materials both domestically and abroad. Our next big milestone is creating a carbon neutral cement, which, if you're not aware, cement is extremely carbon intensive predominantly. This technology is adopting direct air capture processes as part of its process and uses byproducts from the mineral resource extractions here in Alberta, such as the oil and gas sector or different mining operations. ZS2 Technology solution is providing a great circular economy solution, is in a great example of Alberta's unique opportunity and unique solutions being developed here in the province, and is a highly scalable CO2 carbon capture and utilization tech. We're just one example, though, however, of all the clean tech companies that are operating and trying to get off the ground here in the province. And we're looking at addressing some of the larger world problems that we're seeing. But this gives Alberta a unique opportunity to develop some of these solutions. Competition, as was mentioned, is fierce in this sector, both locally and globally, and we need to remain competitive. Companies like myself that are in the startup to scale up mode particularly need incentives to continue to be competitive in a broad landscape, particularly with our neighbors of the South having aggressive programs and other countries trying to match these programs. Every dollar invested has potential for tremendous returns on investment. And we're looking for strategies and programs like the one being proposed that provide funding and incentives for us to remain in Alberta and for Alberta to remain competitive in this large landscape, where I see global competition is strong. Let's make Alberta a leader in this space. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, Doug, for sharing your story with us, and we're very happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you. Just a reminder, if you're on Zoom, it's the raise hand function. If you're on the phone, it's *9. Please state your name and outlet and who you'd like to direct your question to. Janet, your line is open.
Hi there. I'm actually not sure whether this is a question for Ms. Ganley and Mr. Eggen, but just if you could clarify, is this policy in direct response to the Inflation Reduction Act?
It's part of our Alberta's Future Act, the initiatives that we've put forward over the last year. And it's working based on the demonstrable success of tax credits in other sectors. Let's not forget that the UCP has chosen tax cuts, which has led to a lot of flight of capital and uncertainty around investment back into the province of Alberta. A tax credit has the singular ability to make sure that the money stays here, that jobs are produced here, that there's training produced here as well, so that we can grow and diversify our economy.
Do you have a follow-up, Janet?
Yes. So what's the timeline for this payoff? You're saying it would generate potentially $10 billion in economic activity.
Yes.
By what year would that occur, and how did you come up with that number?
Well, it's a scale up based on existing technologies and companies such as Doug's here to get immediate payback. But it would take a number of years for us to fully realize the potential of this. It's based on investment and the success of tax credits in other jurisdictions, including the United States.
Thank you, Janet. We'll go to our next caller. Catherine, your line is open.
Hey, Catherine Bukowski with Alberta Today. So I think you had touched on this, that the UCP canceled the Alberta Investor Tax Credit.
Yes.
And in question period in the House, they're often talking about how much venture capital investment Alberta has seen. So can you explain why? You did touch on this, but why you believe tax credits are are better than tax cuts?
Sure. And, just to be clear, Alberta's capital investment is lagging behind other jurisdictions, other provinces, and comparable jurisdictions in North America. And quite frankly, the tax cuts that the UCP chose when they first formed governments did not result in investment here in the province. In fact, you saw a lot of capital flight based on paying off dividends and so forth, profit payoffs and so forth with existing companies. We know that with tax credits, I mean, just look at the film and television industry, that you can compel the money and the investments and the activity, the economic activity, to take place right here in Alberta. That benefits not just our economy, but it helps to create jobs and creates I think synthesis with our advanced education and other research capacity we have here in the province. Alberta is a very strong jurisdiction in regards to energy and technology, but we need to make sure we capitalize on that and continue to modernize it every step of the way. This is a way to add jobs, and I believe that the time is ripe immediately.
Do you have a follow-up, Catherine?
Yeah, why make it a refundable tax credit as opposed to non-refundable?
I will have to get back to you on that, but it seems compelling that our choice is what's. Again, it's a question of responsibility, and to ensure that investment and economic development takes place here.
Thank you. We'll go to. We'll do one more pass for questions. Janet. Janet, your line is open if you have another question there.
Hi, I do. Yes, I have many more. What's your concern with the current approach that this government is taking? It seems like there's a lot of. You've mentioned it. You obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I have concerns about, how, for example, they're not creating a door open for the concrete enhancement and using carbon to develop the technologies such as Doug's company here. We see a lot of people getting left out in the cold. I mean, quite frankly, this absence of technology tax credits in this last budget absolutely floored the tech industry. The UCP government made noises about doing it, and then they refused, right? And so it's important that we keep the doors open to the widest possible enhancement of sectors that we can here in the province of Alberta. And, uncertainty simply leads to a whole domino effect of negative outcomes. And so the Alberta New Democrats are here to make sure that we diversify our economy, that we play with the strengths that we've had historically here in the province, and we add jobs in all sectors through a series of tax credits and other incentives.
Can I supplement?
Of course, yeah.
I would just add the UCP's approach, so their blanket tax cut. The corporate tax rate only applies to companies that are generating in excess of $500,000 a year in profit. And so that's not necessarily new companies, and it's not necessarily the things we want to encourage. It's fine to have incentives for large incumbents who are already generating massive amounts of profit. But I think what we're looking to do here is to create incentives that attract new investment to new areas and encourage new technologies. And in particular, this is looking to sort of enhance clean tech technologies, amongst other things. And what's important about that is that, as we move forward, investors are looking at ESG factors. They're looking at things like that. So the more we can encourage carbon reduction with these sorts of incentives, the less we have to use sort of sticks and other mechanisms that could have kind of economic damage, and the more we're able to compete, especially with the U.S. and the IRA.
Thank you, Jenna. We're going to go to another caller on the line. Please state your name and outlet and who you'd like to direct your question to.
Hi, it's Lisa from the Journal. David, you mentioned off the top, you listed a few sectors that would be covered under this, but then you also mentioned technology companies being left behind. by the budget. I think you're referring to like video game companies that were expecting a tax incentive. I'm wondering if you could just like list fully what all of the kind of sectors that this would cover.
Sure. Yeah, no, thank you. And we are looking at critical mineral technologies, and we're looking as well at alternative energy developments, right, like cathodes and batteries and so forth, and then also low carbon construction technologies as well. I mean, certainly we wouldn't be prescriptive outside those broad categories. I mean, there's other possibilities that could emerge, and you can see built into this, in fact, with new technologies that are deemed potentially successful, you have a 10% bump from the 20% tax credit to 30. Other one.
I would just add that we've also committed to the digital media tax credit. So that's it's a different tax credit, just not in this particular bill.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was using that as an illustration of, you know, how the absence of targeted tax credits can cause some serious economic damage, right? So this is a different category. It's a category around manufacturing and technology, using technology as well.
Do you have a follow-up, Lisa?
Yeah, I'm wondering for Doug, I know that like different government entities like Alberta Innovates, they offer like startup funding and grants and things like that. I'm wondering why those like existing programs that the government currently offers aren't helpful for your particular business, or maybe they're inappropriate, or they don't apply, or what's the problem with kind of existing incentives for new emerging companies?
So those particular programs that you mentioned are certainly helpful, and you know, at various levels in the startup space, they definitely can be a game changer, particularly when you're seeking alternative investments to gain sort of that validation from a recognized third party that oftentimes is pretty prestigious. But in a rising interest rate environment, I can tell you that venture capital has become much more difficult to raise. And typically all these programs require matching investments. And so one of the complexities and one of the gaps that I see in sort of the clean tech ecosystem is that when you're in that startup to scale up mode, it's very difficult for companies to raise that, you know, we'll call it seed or Series A funding. When you're looking at what's available. And so every dollar, you know, that we spend really does need to have a return on investment. And when you're pre-earnings, but starting to generate revenue and demonstrating those sort of metrics, and the venture capital space sort of dries up, then you know, you're looking for programs to help stretch every dollar that you can, so that one day you'd ultimately see a return, both from a company perspective and in whatever area you're operating.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Our MLAs have to scoot out, so please get in touch with me if you have any further questions. And thank you everyone for today. That concludes our press conference.